My best friend told 43 people I was mentally unstable, used a neighborhood group text, and I counted every name. I'm Paisley Yancey, 38, park ranger in Delaware. Until 11 days ago, Pearl Kingman was the closest thing I had to a sister. While Pearl was sending that text, I was at my kitchen table writing her a check. $1,300 a month for 9 years. She couldn't cover her mortgage. I could. I never told a soul. But Pearl's own son had been listening. For years. And last Saturday at a block party on Wexford Lane, with Pearl standing right there, that boy said every single thing she prayed nobody would ever hear. Now, before I take you back to the beginning, if you want to hear how a 16-year-old kid brought an entire street to silence, how $87,000 in secret payments came to light in front of the people Pearl worked hardest to impress, subscribe to this channel right now and hit that notification bell, because this story has a moment in it that I still can't talk about without my hands shaking. And if you're listening from somewhere right now, it's late, you're in bed, you're driving, drop a comment and tell me where you're at. I want to know who's hearing this. All right. Let me take you back to March of 2015, the first time Pearl Kingman sat on my couch and cried about money. So, present day, 11 days after that block party. I'm sitting on my back steps. It's a Tuesday morning, maybe 7:15. I've got a coffee that's already gone cold, and my phone face down on the concrete because I cannot look at it one more time. There are 14 unread messages from people in the neighborhood. I haven't opened a single one. Some of them are people who saw what happened Saturday. Some are people who heard about it secondhand. And at least 3 are from Pearl herself. Though I only know that because my lock screen showed her name before I flipped the phone over. My supervisor at Brandywine Creek State Park, a guy named Dale, had texted me at 6 that morning. "You good?" 2 words. That's all he needed to say, because Dale already knew. Pearl had called the park office back in February, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The thing about sitting on those back steps is that Pearl and I used to sit there together. She lived 4 houses down on the same block, Wexford Lane, a little cul-de-sac in a neighborhood called Fox Run, the kind of place where everybody waves at each other whether they mean it or not. Pearl moved in about 2 months after I did, back in 2014. Her son Colton was 7 at the time. She was freshly divorced from a man named Russ, who I never met, and who, based on everything Pearl said, was the worst human being who ever lived. I believed her. I had no reason not to. I was 28 at the time. I'd been a park ranger for about 2 years, stationed at Brandywine Creek, which is gorgeous. 933 acres right along the Brandywine River. I drove the same 15-minute route to work every morning through those rolling Delaware hills. I loved that job. Still do. But back then, I was lonely. I just ended a relationship, a 2-year thing with a guy named Travis that fizzled out. And I didn't have a lot of people close to me. My mom lived in Bethany Beach, about 2 hours south. My older brother, Wallace, was in Reno. So when Pearl showed up next door with a 7-year-old and this big laugh and these stories about her terrible ex-husband, I thought, okay, here we go. This is my person. And Pearl was magnetic. I'll give her that. She had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. She'd lean in when you talked, grab your wrist when she laughed, remember tiny details about your life and bring them up weeks later. She was warm. She was funny. She was the first person I'd call on a bad day, and the last person I'd text goodnight. For about the first year, I thought I'd won the friend lottery. But even that first year, and I didn't see this at the time, there were cracks. Pearl never had enough. Not money, not attention, not sympathy. Every conversation somehow circled back to her. If I had a hard day at work, she'd listen for about 90 seconds and then pivot to something worse that happened to her. If someone else in the neighborhood got attention, a promotion, a new car, a birthday party, Pearl would find a way to diminish it. Not cruelly, just casually. Oh, that's nice for her, I guess. That kind of thing. I filed it away and kept going. Because I loved her. And because I didn't know yet what she was building behind my back. There's one memory from that first year that I keep coming back to. October 2014. Pearl and I were sitting on my back steps. Same steps I'm sitting on right now. And she was telling me about her marriage to Russ. How he'd controlled everything. The bank accounts, the social calendar, even what she wore. And she looked at me and said, "You're the first person who's ever just let me be myself." And I remember feeling this warmth, this sense of purpose, like I was saving her. I think about that now and I feel sick, because she wasn't telling me who she was was testing what I'd believe. Now let me jump forward again. Present day, 8 days after the block party. I'm at work, sitting in the ranger station at Brandywine Creek, which is basically a repurposed stone building from the 1800s with bad Wi-Fi and one working bathroom. I'm trying to finish a trail assessment report, but my brain won't cooperate because I keep replaying Saturday in my head. Specifically, I keep hearing Colton's voice, the way it cracked on one particular word. I'll get to that. Dale knocked on my office door around noon. He's in his 50s, ex-Army, doesn't say much. He came in with 2 sandwiches from Capriotti's, which, if you're not from Delaware, is basically our religion. And he set one down on my desk without asking if I wanted it. "Pearl called again this morning," he said. I stopped typing. What did she say? Same thing, that you've been harassing her, that you're unstable, that she's worried about you being in a position of authority around park visitors. He unwrapped his sandwich. I told her to stop calling. This was the 3rd time Pearl had contacted my workplace. The first was February 6th. She'd called the front desk and asked to speak to whoever supervised me. She told them I'd been showing up at her house uninvited, that I'd been obsessive and erratic. None of it was true. Not one word. But the thing about a lie told to the right person at the right time? It sticks, even when it's eventually disproven. Dale believed me. But I'd seen the look on his face that first time. The half-second of doubt. "She's going to keep doing this," I said. Dale took a bite. Chewed. "Maybe, but she called the wrong office. I've known you 6 years, Paisley, and I don't know her, but I know what a campaign looks like." That word, campaign. He was right. That's exactly what it was. Pearl wasn't just angry at me. She was running an operation. And I was starting to realize that the group text, the one with 43 names, wasn't the beginning. It was just the part I could see. Because by then, I'd already learned what Pearl had been saying about me privately for years. Small things, slipped into conversations at school pickup, at the Fox Run HOA meetings, at the hair salon on Concord Pike where half the neighborhood went on Saturdays. Things like, "Paisley means well, but she's very intense," and "I love her, but I worry about her sometimes." And "She latches on to people. It's a pattern." I found all this out in the span of about 72 hours after the block party. People came to me, one by one, like they'd been holding it and finally had permission to let go. But the part that still gets me, the part I keep coming back to, is that while she was saying all that, while she was quietly making me into someone nobody should trust, I was paying her electric bill. Let me go back. 2016. The first time Pearl asked me for money. It was a Thursday night in January. Colton was 8. Pearl came over with a bottle of wine, the cheap kind, the one with the kangaroo on it, and she sat at my kitchen table and cried. She said Russ hadn't paid child support in 4 months. She said she was $1,400 behind on her mortgage, and the bank had sent a letter. She said she'd been applying for jobs, but nobody was calling her back because she hadn't worked in 3 years, and her resume had gaps. And I did what anyone would do when their best friend is crying at their kitchen table. I said, "How much do you need?" She said if she could just borrow $1,200 to get through January, she'd pay me back by April. I wrote the check that night. She never paid it back. By March, she needed another $800. By June, it was $1,000. I started keeping a notebook, not because I wanted to track what she owed me, but because I was trying to keep my own budget straight. I was making $52,000 a year as a park ranger. That's not nothing, but in northern Delaware, with a mortgage and a car payment and property taxes, it's not a lot of extra room either. I was giving Pearl money I should have been putting into savings. But here's the thing, and this is hard to explain to people who haven't been in this kind of friendship. I didn't feel taken advantage of. Not then. I felt needed. I felt like I was the one person Pearl could count on, and that meant something to me. After Travis, after years of feeling like I wasn't enough for anyone, Pearl made me feel essential. So the checks kept coming. By the end of 2016, I'd given her, I went back and counted later, $7,200. By 2017, it was more, because Colton needed braces, and then Pearl's car needed a transmission, and then there was a leak in her roof. Each time she'd ask, she'd cry. Each time I'd say yes. And each time she'd promise to pay me back. And each time I'd say, "Whenever you can. No pressure." I never told anyone. Not my mom, not Wallace, not Dale. I didn't tell anyone because Pearl asked me not to. "Please don't tell people I'm struggling," she said once, grabbing my hand. "You're the only one who sees me like this. Everyone else thinks I have it together." And her eyes were wet when she said it. She squeezed my fingers, and I thought, this is real. This is a woman who is ashamed and trusting me with her shame. That's what friendship looks like. So I protected her image. I kept her secret. And looking back, keeping that secret meant Pearl controlled the whole story. She could tell people whatever she wanted about me, and I'd never correct it, because correcting it meant exposing her finances. She had me locked in, without me knowing it. I should mention, during this whole period, Colton was growing up. He was 9, 10, 11, a quiet kid, did okay in school, played recreational soccer at the Brandywine YMCA. I drove him to practice on Tuesdays because Pearl said she had a scheduling conflict. I later found out the scheduling conflict was a standing nail appointment, but yeah. Anyway, Colton was a sweet boy. He'd come over to my house sometimes after school and do homework at my kitchen table while Pearl was running errands, and I'd make him grilled cheese and he'd tell me about his teachers and his friends and the book he was reading. One afternoon, he looked up from his math worksheet and said, "Miss Paisley, how come you help us so much?" I ruffled his hair and said, "Because that's what family does." He went back to his homework, didn't say anything else, but he nodded once, real slow, like he was filing that away somewhere. I cared about that kid. I still do, more than I can say. And that's part of what made it all so hard, because I wasn't just paying for Pearl. I was paying for Colton, his braces, his school supplies, his winter coat in 2017, $120 from Dick's Sporting Goods because Pearl said she couldn't afford it, and I couldn't watch that boy go to school cold. Every time I thought about stopping the checks, I thought about him. Pearl knew that. She had to have known that. And during all this, during the checks and the crying and the, "You're the only one who understands me," Pearl said something to me one night that I barely registered at the time. We were on the couch, watching something on Netflix, and she looked over and said, "You know, Paige, I think the park ranger thing is sweet, but don't you ever want something bigger? Like a real career where people take you seriously?" She said it with that soft smile. I laughed it off, but she planted it. This idea that I was small, that my life was small, that I should be grateful she was in it. Look, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, how did she not see it? And honestly, sitting here now, I ask myself that every single day. So let me ask you this. Have you ever been so deep inside someone's version of you that you forgot you had your own? If that's ever been you, drop a comment, because I need to know I'm not the only one who missed it. And stay right here, because 2018 is when Pearl started turning the whole neighborhood against me. That's when she went after my reputation. Present day, 6 days after the block party. I'm at the Wawa on Kirkwood Highway, which, again, if you're not from Delaware, Wawa is basically where everyone goes for everything. And I'm standing in line for coffee when a woman named Cheryl Ostrander taps me on the shoulder. Cheryl lives on Wexford Lane, 3 doors past Pearl. We've never been close. Maybe said 50 words to each other in 10 years. But she's standing there with this look on her face, and she says, "I owe you an apology." I didn't know what she meant. She told me she'd been part of a text chain, not the 43-person one, a different one, smaller, just 8 women from the block, where Pearl had been talking about me for years. Cheryl said Pearl would share things I'd, supposedly, done or said, and Cheryl believed it because Pearl was so convincing and because, her words, she always sounded worried about you, not angry. I thought she was being a good friend, Cheryl said. I thought she was looking out for you. I asked her what Pearl had said. Cheryl pulled out her phone and scrolled. She showed me messages going back to 2019. Pearl had told them I was financially reckless, that I couldn't manage money, that she'd tried to help me budget and I'd blown up at her. She told them I had anger issues. She told them I'd been in a dark place since my breakup with Travis, which had been 5 years earlier at that point. She told them I was jealous of her relationship with other friends. Cheryl turned the phone toward me and I took it with both hands. And then my finger stopped working. I don't mean that in a dramatic way. I mean I physically could not scroll. My hands went numb. The coffee I'd been holding, I set it on the nearest shelf because I was going to drop it. I stared at the phone screen and the words were there, but my brain wasn't reading them. It was like looking at a page in a language I used to know. I stood in that Wawa holding a woman's phone, reading messages about myself that I never knew existed, and I felt small, hollowed out, empty in a way I'd never been empty before. Cheryl said, after Saturday, after what Colton said, I went back and read all of it again, and I realized Pearl was describing herself. Every single thing she accused you of, she was the one doing it. I handed the phone back. I think I said thank you. I'm not sure. I bought my coffee. I walked to my car, and I sat in that Wawa parking lot for 45 minutes. I didn't cry. I just sat there with both hands on the steering wheel and the engine running. The parking lot was full. People were walking in and out. A woman in scrubs was eating a hoagie in the car next to mine. Normal Tuesday. And I was sitting there trying to figure out what to do with the fact that the person I trusted most in the world had been telling people I was financially reckless while I was writing her a check every month. She told them I had anger issues. She told them I was jealous. She told them I couldn't manage money. Me, the woman who'd been managing her mortgage for 6 years on a park ranger's salary. The thing that kept looping in my head wasn't the worst message. It was a small one. From 2020. Pearl had texted the group. Paisley called me crying last night about being alone. I feel bad, but honestly, it's exhausting. I didn't call Pearl that night. I wasn't crying. I was at the ranger station doing inventory. I remember the night because I'd stayed late counting trail markers. And Pearl just made it up. An entire phone call that never happened. For sympathy. For an audience. I sat in that parking lot until the coffee went cold. Then I drove home, pulled into my driveway, and sat there another 20 minutes before going inside. Because what I'm about to tell you about 2018, that's when I should have spoken up. And I didn't. Back to the past. 2018. This is when it turned. The money had been flowing steadily for 2 years at that point. I was writing Pearl a check almost every month. Sometimes $1,300, sometimes $800, rarely less than $500. My notebook had a running total at the bottom of each page. By February 2018, I'd given her just over $22,000. And here's the part that made it all worse. Pearl had gotten a job. In August 2017, she started working part-time at a real estate office on Route 202, doing admin work. She was making maybe $1,800 a month. Not a lot, but something. But the requests didn't stop. She'd adjust the amount down a little. I just need $600 this time. But they never stopped. And I was too deep in it by then to say no. I'd already given so much that stopping felt like admitting the whole thing was a mistake. Now, here's what I didn't know. In January 2018, Pearl went to a Super Bowl party at the home of a woman named Delphine Garrett, another Fox Run neighbor. I wasn't invited. Pearl told me it was a small thing, just a few people. I found out later there were 19 people there. 19. Pearl had specifically told Delphine not to invite me. And at that party, after a few drinks, Pearl told a story about how I'd shown up at her house at midnight crying because I was lonely, and how she'd had to set boundaries with me because it was getting unhealthy. That never happened. I want to be really clear about that. I had never once gone to Pearl's house at midnight. I had never once been told I was crossing a line. She invented it, and she told it to a room full of people who then spent the next several months looking at me differently, and I had no idea why. I noticed it, though. By spring 2018, neighbors who used to wave started just nodding. A woman named Janet, who I used to walk with on Saturday mornings, stopped texting me. The Fox Run bunco group I'd been in for 3 years suddenly had no more room. Each time, I'd ask Pearl if she knew what was going on, and Pearl would tilt her head and say, "People are just weird sometimes, Paige. Don't take it personally." I actually went to Janet's house once, knocked on her door. She opened it about 6 inches and said she was busy. I asked if I'd done something wrong. She looked uncomfortable and said, "No, I've just been, it's a lot right now." I walked home and called Pearl. Pearl said, "Maybe she's going through something. You should give her space." She sounded so reasonable, so caring, and I trusted her. Meanwhile, I started pulling back from the neighborhood. If people didn't want me around, fine. I focused on work. I focused on my trails, my maintenance logs, my wildlife surveys. I took on extra shifts during fall migration season. I spent more time at the park and less time on Wexford Lane. And the lonelier I got, the more I leaned on Pearl, which was exactly what she wanted. And here's the detail I almost forgot. After that bunco group dropped me, Pearl brought me a bottle of wine that weekend. She sat on my couch and said, "Their loss, honestly. You're too real for those women." She clinked her glass against mine, and she looked so sincere I almost cried. That same weekend, Cheryl later told me, Pearl had texted the group. I spoke to Paisley about the bunco thing. She took it really hard. Honestly, I'm keeping an eye on her. If the person who was ruining your name was the same person whose bills you were paying, the one bringing you wine on Friday and texting about you on Saturday, would you confront them? Or would you keep pretending because the truth was too big to fit in your mouth? I think about this every day. I genuinely don't know what the right answer is. Tell me in the comments what you would have done. Because what Pearl did next, the way she escalated in 2020, makes the bunco thing feel like nothing. Don't take it personally. She was the one making it personal. She was the one feeding them a version of me that didn't exist. And every single month, I was still writing her a check. Present day, 4 days after the block party. I'd been pacing my kitchen for 20 minutes before I made myself sit down. Couldn't eat. I'd made toast, and it was just sitting there going cold. I finally pulled the chair out, sat at the dining room table, and opened the notebook. The actual notebook. The spiral-bound one from Office Depot with the green cover, college ruled. I'd started it in 2016 and filled it up by 2021, then switched to a new one. Between the two of them, every payment was there. Date, amount, and a one-line note about what it was for. January 21st, 2016. $1,200. Mortgage behind. March 8th, 2016. $800. Electric plus groceries. June 14th, 2016. $1,000. Colton braces deposit. Page after page, year after year. The total at the back of the second notebook, updated as of 3 weeks before the block party. $87,340. I hadn't opened these notebooks in months, but after what Cheryl showed me at the Wawa, I needed to see it. All of it. Every line. And that's when I noticed something I'd forgotten about. In the margins of a page from October 2019, I'd written a note to myself. Just 5 words. Pearl knows it's me. I stared at that note for a long time, because I'd forgotten the context. But then it came back. In 2019, Pearl told me she was embarrassed about the checks, that it felt weird accepting them with my name on them. So she asked me to Venmo the money to her cousin Margot Devlin, and Margot would transfer it to Pearl. It doesn't feel like charity, Pearl said. But in October 2019, I'd been at Pearl's house, and her laptop was open on the kitchen counter, and I saw, just for a second before she closed it, a Venmo notification from my account to Margot for $900. Pearl closed that laptop fast, real fast, and she looked at me with this expression I couldn't read. She knew. The payments weren't anonymous. They were routed through Margot, but Pearl could see the source. She always knew exactly who was keeping her afloat, and she hated me for it. Have you ever done something kind for someone and realized, way too late, that your kindness made them feel small? And instead of being grateful, they resented you? Because that's the thing Pearl could never admit. Every dollar I gave her was proof she couldn't do it alone. And rather than say, thank you, or I need help, honestly, she decided to make me the villain. If I was crazy, if I was unstable, if I was desperate and clingy, then she wasn't the woman who needed her friend's money. She was the brave woman dealing with a problem friend. That's exactly what she was doing. And she'd been doing it for years. Back to the past. 2020 to 2022. The escalation. The pandemic hit and everything got worse. Pearl lost her job at the real estate office. They shut down for 5 months, and when they reopened, they didn't bring her back. Colton was 13, doing remote school, and Pearl was home full-time with no income except child support payments that came maybe every other month from Russ. My checks went up. $1,500 in April 2020, $1,600 in May. I was an essential worker. Parks were one of the few places people could go, so I was still getting paid, but I was stretched. I hadn't put money into my own savings in almost 2 years. I was driving a 2013 Honda CR-V with 140,000 miles on it because I couldn't afford a new car. And Pearl was sending me Zillow listings for houses in Greenville, the fancy part of Delaware where old DuPont money lives, saying, wouldn't it be nice to live somewhere like that? Meanwhile, the Whisper campaign was accelerating. I found out later, much later after the block party, that in 2020, Pearl started a second text chain. This one wasn't about the neighborhood. It was specifically about me. 6 women. Pearl would text them screenshots of my social media posts with commentary. If I posted a photo from work, me at a trailhead, me with a rescued turtle, Pearl would text the group, look at her trying to seem like she has her life together. I feel bad for her, honestly. She felt bad for me. The woman who was cashing my checks every month felt bad for me. And then she leveled up. Because talking about me behind my back wasn't enough anymore. In late 2021, Pearl started saying things to my face. Small things at first. She'd look at my outfit and say, that's brave. She'd mention my age. I mean, you're almost 40, Paige. Like it was a diagnosis. She'd ask about my dating life in front of other people with this concerned voice, like she was worried about me being alone. One time, November 2021, I think, we were at Delphine's for book club. I hadn't been reading the book, honestly. I'd been working doubles all week, but I went because I was trying to stay connected to people. And Pearl looked at me across Delphine's living room and said, "You seem really tired lately, Paige. Like, not just normal tired. Are you sleeping? Are you eating?" And the way the other women looked at me, with pity, with concern, I realized Pearl had been priming them. She'd already told them something. I just smiled and said, "I'm fine. Long week." And I drank my wine, and I went home, and I sat in my car in my own driveway for 20 minutes because I didn't want to walk into an empty house. And then, and this is the one that sits in my chest, we were at a neighborhood cookout in September 2021, standing near the grill, and a woman named Tabitha complimented my hair. I'd just gotten it cut shorter. Pearl looked at me, looked at Tabitha, and said, "It's cute, but I always think short hair on women our age is kind of a white flag, you know? Like you've given up on being seen." Tabitha went quiet. I went quiet. Pearl smiled and walked over to refill her drink. And I stood there holding a hot dog I didn't want anymore, and I thought, did she just say that? Did that really happen? I opened my mouth. I was going to say something. I don't even know what. And then I closed it. I swallowed it. The way I'd been swallowing things for years. That's what Pearl counted on. She said these things in front of people because she knew I wouldn't make a scene. She knew I'd absorb it. And every time I did, she got bolder. If that made you feel something, subscribe and stay. Because what happened next almost ended my career. It happened. In front of 5 people. Nobody said a word. I wrote her a check for $1,300 the following Tuesday. Present day. 3 days after the block party. Margot Devlin called me. I hadn't spoken to Margot in over a year. She was Pearl's cousin on her mother's side. They'd been close growing up in Smyrna, about 45 minutes south of Wilmington. Margot was the one I'd been Venmoing the money to since 2019. She was the middleman, the filter, the person who made it possible for Pearl to pretend the money came from nowhere. Margot was crying on the phone, and the first thing she said was, "I'm sorry. I should have said something a long time ago." She told me that Pearl had told her the Venmo arrangement was temporary, just a few months, until I get back on my feet. But Margot kept seeing the transfers come in, month after month, year after year. She said she brought it up to Pearl once in 2020, asked her, "How long is Paisley going to keep doing this?" And Pearl told her to mind her own business. And then Margot told me something I wasn't prepared for. She said Pearl had been telling her that I was the one who insisted on sending the money, that I was obsessed with being needed, that she'd tried to tell me to stop and I wouldn't listen, that accepting the money was her way of managing me so I wouldn't do something drastic. Margot believed it. For 3 years she believed it, until Saturday, until Colton. I watched that boy stand up and say what he said, Margot told me, and I realized Pearl had been lying to everybody. Not just the neighbors, not just me, everybody. I asked Margot why she was calling now. She was quiet for a few seconds. Then she said, "Because I have every Venmo transfer, every single one, time-stamped, and I have the texts Pearl sent me about them, and I think you should have all of it." Margot emailed me the records that night. 87 pages of transactions and messages. I printed them at the Staples on Concord Pike at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I sat in the parking lot reading through them with the dome light on. And I'll tell you what, seeing my own name next to all those numbers month after month for 9 years, something shifted. I wasn't sad anymore. I was done. But I still haven't told you what happened at the block party. And you need to hear that, because Colton, that 16-year-old boy who grew up watching all of this, He said something that no one on Wexford Lane will ever forget. Let me go back one more time. February 2023 to June 2024, the period right before everything blew up. Two things happened in early 2023 that changed the equation. First, I stopped paying. Not all at once. In January 2023, I sent Pearl $900 instead of the usual $1,300. In February, I sent $600. In March, I sent $400. By April, I sent nothing. I just stopped. I didn't make a speech about it. I didn't confront her. I just quietly closed the notebook and put my money back in my own account. Pearl noticed within 2 weeks. She texted me, "Hey, is everything okay with you financially? I know things can get tight." Like she was checking on me. Like I was the one struggling. I told her I was fine. I didn't explain. And I watched her face change over the next few months. Not all at once. Pearl was too smart for that. But the warmth cooled. The invitations stopped. The texts got shorter. By summer 2023, Pearl was barely speaking to me, and I understood exactly why. I wasn't useful anymore. Second thing, and this is the one that triggered everything. In February 2023, I found out that Pearl had called the Brandywine Creek State Park main office. She asked to speak with someone about a concern regarding a ranger's mental fitness. She told whoever answered that she was a close personal friend of mine, and that she was worried about my stability, and that I'd been exhibiting erratic behavior at home. She suggested they might want to look into it. Dale told me about it in March, after he'd already handled it. He'd spoken to the caller, realized it was a personal situation, and documented it as a non-credible complaint. But he told me because he wanted me to know. "This woman," he said, "not your friend." I know. I already knew by then. But hearing Dale say it, this man who doesn't waste words on anything, it made it real. I'd spent 9 years and $87,000 protecting someone who was actively trying to burn down my life. And then June 2024, the block party on Wexford Lane. I almost didn't go. Pearl and I hadn't spoken in weeks. The whole neighborhood was going to be there. Delphine, Cheryl, Janet, Tabitha, all the people Pearl had been feeding her version of me to for years. I didn't want to be looked at. I didn't want to be the person everyone whispered about by the cooler. I called my brother Wallace in Reno the night before. He's 3 years older, and he doesn't sugarcoat things. I told him I was thinking about skipping it. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Pace, you've been skipping things for 6 years because of this woman. You skip one more thing, and she wins." He was right. Wallace doesn't talk much, but when he does, he's right. If you were standing at the edge of that block party, if you'd given 9 years and $87,000 and gotten nothing back but a reputation you didn't earn, would you have gone? Would you have walked into a yard full of people who'd been told you were the problem? Tell me in the comments, because I went, and I need to know if you would have done the same. Stay right here, because what happened at that party is the reason I can finally tell this story out loud. I woke up Saturday morning and I cleaned my kitchen. I don't know why. Force of habit, I guess. When I'm nervous, I clean. I scrubbed the counters and wiped down the cabinet fronts, and at some point I opened the drawer where I keep the notebooks, and I just looked at them. Both of them. Green cover, blue cover. 9 years of receipts for a friendship that never existed. I almost laughed. I'm standing there in rubber gloves at 7 in the morning, looking at 2 spiral notebooks, and I'm thinking about the time Colton spilled grape juice on my kitchen table, and Pearl yelled at him, and I was the one who said, "It's just juice." I don't know why that memory came to me right then, but it did, and I closed the drawer. I showered. I got dressed. I put on a pair of jeans and a tank top, and I pulled my hair back, and I didn't try to look like anything other than what I was, a 38-year-old park ranger who was tired but not broken. But I went, because I'd lived on that street for 10 years, and I wasn't going to let Pearl take my home from me too. The wise woman doesn't leave her own house. She opens the windows. I showed up at 2 p.m. with a bag of chips and a 6-pack of root beer. I said hello to people. I stood by the fence. I watched Pearl work the crowd, hugging Delphine, complimenting Janet's earrings, laughing too loud at something someone's husband said. She saw me and she didn't wave. She just looked, and then looked away. Colton was sitting on the Garrett's front steps, 16 years old, tall now, taller than Pearl. He had earbuds in, but only one was actually in his ear. The other dangled against his chest. He was watching his mother, and he was watching me, and there was something on his face that I couldn't name yet, and Colton Kingman is about to say something that rewrites everything. Okay, the block party. Present day. Saturday. What actually happened? It was around 4:30. The grill was going. Someone had set up a Bluetooth speaker playing 90s R&B, and there were maybe 35-40 people spread across Delphine Garrett's front yard and driveway. Kids running through a sprinkler, couples in lawn chairs. Normal suburban Saturday in June. Pearl had been avoiding me for about 2 hours. Not obviously. She's too good at that. But she made sure there was always a group of people between us. She kept her back to me. She kept laughing. She was performing. And then Delphine, who I think was trying to be nice but had terrible timing, called out from the porch, "Pearl, Paisley's here too. Come over. You two should catch up." The yard got a little quieter. Not silent, but you could feel people's attention shift. A few heads turned. Pearl put on this smile, this perfect, tight, concerned smile, and walked over to where I was standing by the fence. She put her hand on my arm. In front of everyone. "Paisley, honey," she said, "I've been meaning to call you. How are you doing? I've been so worried about you." My jaw tightened. I said, "I'm fine, Pearl." "Are you, though?" She tilted her head. That tilt. "Because some of us have been really concerned. And I just want you to know, we're all here for you, no matter what you're going through." She said it loud enough for the people nearby to hear. And the way she said, "what you're going through," she made it sound like I was in crisis, like she was staging an intervention at a cookout. I didn't respond. I took a sip of my root beer. I looked past her at the yard, at all these people I'd lived near for a decade, and I thought, they think I'm broken. She made them think I'm broken. And right now she's proving it to them in real time. Pearl squeezed my arm. "We love you, Paige. You know that, right?" And that's when Colton stood up. He'd been on the steps, watching, both earbuds out now. He walked across the yard, not fast, not slow, and stopped about 5 feet from his mother. The Bluetooth speaker was between songs and the timing was almost eerie. This pocket of silence right when he opened his mouth. "Stop it, Mom." Pearl turned. Her hand dropped from my arm. "Colton, go back and sit." I said, "Stop it." His voice wasn't loud, but it was steady, and it was shaking at the edges, the way a voice shakes when someone's been holding something for a long time and they can't hold it anymore. "You're not worried about her." He pointed at me. "You've never been worried about her. She's the one who's been keeping us alive." Pearl's face went white. I'm not exaggerating. The color left her face. "Colton, September 2019. You couldn't pay for my school field trip. $45. Paisley Venmo'd Margot and Margot sent it to you and you told me the school waived it." He was talking fast now. Not yelling, reciting, like he'd been memorizing this. "December 2020. You cried to Paisley about the heating bill. She sent $1,400. You bought yourself a new winter coat the next week, a Canada Goose. I saw the tag in the trash. $895. Colton, that is enough.
It's not enough! His voice cracked on the word enough. That's the crack I told you about, the one I keep hearing when I try to sleep. Because he wasn't angry when he said it. He was grieving. April 2022. He continued, "You told Paisley I needed a tutor. $300 a month. I never had a tutor, Mom. I never had a tutor. Where did that money go?" The yard was silent now, completely silent. The sprinkler was still running, and the water sounded like static. Pearl's hands were at her sides, and she was looking at her son, and she didn't say a word. Then Colton looked at me, right at me, and he said, "I'm sorry, Miss Paisley. I heard everything, through the walls, for years. I heard you say yes, every single time. And I heard my mom laugh about it after you left."
Pearl said, and this is the cruelest thing she ever said to anyone, and she said it in front of 40 people, with tears running down her son's face. "Colton is going through a phase. He's been acting out since his father left. You can't take anything he says seriously. He doesn't understand adult situations." She said it with that smile, that steady, reasonable, concerned smile. She dismissed her own son who was standing there trying to tell the truth, to protect her image, in front of everyone. And Delphine Garrett, who had been standing on her porch with her mouth open, said quietly, "Pearl, I think we all understand plenty." Janet put her hand over her mouth. Tabitha set down her plate and walked 3 steps closer, not to Pearl, but to Colton. Cheryl Ostrander, the woman who would later show me the text chains at the Wawa, was standing by the cooler. She hadn't moved, but her face had completely changed. She was looking at Pearl the way you look at someone you suddenly realize you've never actually known. A man named Boyd Halverson, who'd lived at the end of the cul-de-sac since before any of us moved in, said, "Young man, come sit with me," and gestured to a lawn chair next to his. Colton looked at him, looked at me, then walked over and sat down. He put his hands between his knees and stared at the ground. Nobody moved for what felt like a full minute. Pearl looked around the yard, at Cheryl, at Janet, at Tabitha, at all the women she'd been performing for. And for the first time in the 9 years I'd known her, I saw it, the crack. Pearl's eyes, for just a half second, went completely empty. Not angry, not scared, empty. Like the engine behind the performance had stalled. And then the mask came back. But everybody saw it. The whole yard saw the real Pearl Kingman for exactly 1 breath. Pearl took her purse off the lawn chair, grabbed Colton by the arm, he pulled away, and walked back toward her house without saying another word. I stood by the fence. My hands were steady. I wasn't crying. I was just still. Delphine came down off the porch and hugged me. Cheryl walked over. Boyd brought me a bottle of water and said, "You're a better person than most of us." That night, I sat on my back steps alone. No coffee, no phone, just the sound of the neighborhood settling into quiet. And I cried. Not because of Pearl, because of Colton. Because a 16-year-old boy had to stand in a yard full of adults and do what none of them had the guts to do. That kid, that brave, heartbroken kid. It's been 11 days. The dominoes are still falling. Delphine sent a message to the main Fox Run neighborhood group, the big one, 80-something people, the day after the block party. She didn't mention Pearl by name. She wrote, "I want to publicly apologize to a neighbor I should have stood up for a long time ago. I believed things that weren't true. I'm ashamed of that." Within an hour, 6 other women had replied with variations of the same thing. By Sunday night, 22 people had posted. Pearl's name wasn't in that thread, but everybody knew. Cheryl showed me the other text chain, the 6-woman one where Pearl had been sharing my social media posts with commentary for years. All 6 women have now left that group.
3 of them have texted me directly. Janet, the one who stopped walking with me, showed up at my door on Monday with a card and a tin of cookies, and she stood on my porch and said, "I'm sorry I believed her. I should have asked you." I invited her in. We sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours. She told me Pearl had told her that I'd said nasty things about Janet's divorce. I never said anything about Janet's divorce. I didn't even know the details until Janet told me that afternoon. The Bunko group called, the one that had no more room in 2018. They have room now. I haven't gone back. I'm not sure I will. Some apologies are late enough that accepting them feels like more work than the original wound. Pearl's cousin Margot sent me the full Venmo archive, 87 pages, 9 years, $87,340. I printed it. I've looked at it twice. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. A woman I work with, not at the park, a friend from a continuing education class I took at the University of Delaware, suggested I talk to a lawyer. I made an appointment for next Tuesday. I don't know if I'll pursue anything, but I want to know what my options are.
Dale, my supervisor, quietly noted Pearl's 3 calls to the park office in my personnel file as unfounded external complaints, no action warranted. He told me this over lunch at the ranger station. Then he said, "If she calls again, I'm referring it to the state police as harassment." He took a bite of his sandwich and added, "Also, your trail assessment was late. Don't let her make you late again." That's Dale. Back to work. Pearl has texted me 11 times since the block party. I haven't opened any of them. Through the lock screen, I can see fragments. You don't understand. Colton doesn't know what he's... I can explain everything if you... Paisley, please. I haven't responded. Colton texted me separately. One message. "I'm sorry it took me so long." I wrote back, "You were never supposed to carry that." Now, here's where I'm at. I'm sitting on my back steps. Same place I always sit. It's Thursday evening, warm. The sun's going down behind the trees at the end of Wexford Lane. My phone is on my knee. And about 10 minutes ago, I saw Pearl's car pull out of her driveway. She drove past my house, slowed down, and kept going. She circled the cul-de-sac and parked 3 houses down. She's still sitting in her car. I think she wants to come to my door. I think she's working up the nerve. And I'm sitting here, and I'm thinking about whether I'll answer it. 9 years, $87,000. A reputation she tried to shred. A career she tried to destroy. A son she tried to silence. All of it for what? Because my help made her feel small? Because it was easier to make me the problem than to admit she needed me? I don't hate Pearl. I need to say that. I don't hate her. But I am so tired of being the one who gives and gives and gives, while the person I'm giving to tells the world I'm nothing. Part of me, the part that drove Colton to soccer practice and made him grilled cheese and wrote 108 checks without being asked. Part of me wants to open that door. Not for Pearl. For the version of Pearl I thought existed. The one who grabbed my wrist when she laughed. The one who said I was her person. But that version was never real. And I think I've finally accepted that. And if you've listened this far, and I mean really listened, all the way through, then I want to say thank you. I didn't think I could tell this whole story out loud. I've been carrying it for 9 years in those notebooks, in those Venmo receipts, in the way I flinch when someone asks me, "Are you okay?" in that concerned voice. But you sat with me through all of it, and that matters more than you know. If this story hit you somewhere real, if you've been the one paying for somebody who was trashing you behind your back, if you've been the one keeping someone else's life running while they told the world you were falling apart, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because there are so many women walking around right now carrying a version of this story in their chest, and they think they're alone. What would you do if the person who used you for 9 years showed up at your door asking to explain? Would you open it? Would you walk away? Drop it in the comments. I want to know, because I'm genuinely not sure what the right answer is. And if you want to hear another story from someone who's been through it, there's one right here, waiting for you. Just click. We'll get through it together. Here's what I know now. Nobody owes a performance of forgiveness to the person who never earned it. The sun's almost down. Pearl's car is still there, 3 houses away. My porch light clicks on automatically. The timer I set in 2016. My door is closed. The notebooks are in the kitchen drawer. The coffee on the step is cold again. I stand up. I pick up the mug. I walk toward the door. And I stop. I haven't decided yet.